There are a lot of interesting and unique quarterbacks in the 2025 NFL rookie class, but one of them has a stranger story than them all. He was pretty much a zero-star recruit coming out of high school, had to go to the FCS level, and made the most of his one season and one opportunity in the Power 4, and had such a good season that the NFL team down the street decided to give him an undrafted free agent contract. Right now, many are saying that Max Brosmer has a real chance of making the roster for the Vikings, and maybe could be a factor in their team someday. Today, I want to introduce you to one of the strangest rookie quarterbacks we've seen in recent memory, as we're going to go through the unique story of Max Brosmer. How did the guy go from a zero-star recruit to one of the best players in the FCS, and eventually a future NFL quarterback? But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Max Brosmer. So going back in time, Brosmer apparently was a die-hard Ohio State football fan, and now will get a chance to maybe play against them. He began playing football when he was just 7 years old, living in the city of Toronto, Canada, and at the time he was a wide receiver and played in a league that used Canadian football rules. He eventually would arrive at Centennial High School in Georgia and quickly became a star with a ton of potential. In 2018, Brosmer was a prolific passer whose name got lost amongst a bunch of standouts in the high school football world in Georgia. Guys like Dylan Fromm and Harrison Bailey were getting all the hype, but he actually had more passing yards than them. His coach said, quote, "He's a very intelligent pocket passer and a tremendous leader for this team." While he put up big yards and had a good arm, many joked and talked about how poor his running ability was. Their head coach said, quote, "Our staff used to give him a hard time about his running, and even though he ran for more than 600 yards as a senior, he was not the fleetest of the foot at the quarterback position." In his junior and senior seasons at Centennial, he ended up throwing for 7,209 yards with 61 touchdowns. This would prevent him from getting a ton of interest from more FBS programs. He ended up running for 789 yards and 7 touchdowns during those 2 years, but it still was enough to hold him back from getting those bigger offers. One fact you probably also didn't know is that he actually was given a preferred walk-on opportunity by Kirby Smart in Georgia. This came after he was committed to New Hampshire, and it led to an interesting phone call he received during a trip to New Hampshire. He said, quote, "My high school athletic director, Jeff Birch, called me right after I got off the plane in Boston and said, quote, 'Max, Kirby Smart is here to see you.' I was like, 'Coach Birch, tell them I'm already at New Hampshire and I'm 100% going to UNH.' Kirby ended up flying on his helicopter to his high school and did all that SEC showy stuff, but he was fully committed." Still though, he was extremely flattered. He said, quote, "What can you say bad about UGA? It's crazy big, the atmosphere is awesome, and it's near home, but I kinda wanted a college life away from home. I also wanted to pay back my parents for what they did for me all through the years, and I have an opportunity to have a full scholarship at New Hampshire." While everything was good for him, he would face a major setback towards the end of his high school career, as at the end of a 38-28 victory over Northview, there was a scary moment. According to his coach, Brosmer was the leading passer in Georgia high school football, and he would have an injury that resulted in a nasty scar on his left knee, which he calls a tattoo, and it left him wondering if New Hampshire would even honor his scholarship and he'd play Division I football at any level. It also left him wondering, could he ever get faster and actually become a better quarterback and athlete? The question is, yes. He ended up having only one scholarship offer, and New Hampshire honored it, and he accepted it. He would join New Hampshire in the fall of 2019, and according to 24/7 Sports, Brosmer was a 2-star player, the number 150 pro-style quarterback, and the 3,690th best player in the class of 2019. So, how did he end up doing at New Hampshire? Well, let's take a look. So, how does a high school quarterback from Georgia end up at UNH? That's a question Max Brosmer has been answering a lot lately. He enrolled in New Hampshire in January of 2019 and ended up completing 12 of 19 passes for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns in New Hampshire's spring game. He was not even intercepted once. In 2019, he'd play in a total of 11 games and would make an instant impact, and one game in particular showed his potential. New Hampshire and Rhode Island were tied 24-24 with less than a minute to play, and he was faced with a 3rd and 4 from their own 34. Anything but a first down meant that UNH would have to give the ball back to Rhode Island and increase the risk of opening the season at 0-3. After finding no open receiver when he dropped back to pass, he ran to the right side for 8 yards and a first down, then had a 41-yard pass to the receiver, and then they had a field goal and won 27-24. In the heat of the moment and the pressure of the game, Max Brosmer made things happen. During that freshman year, he would appear in 11 games, racking up 1,900 yards and 12 touchdown passes. He was awarded the Conference Rookie of the Week twice, and he led the Wildcats to a respectable 6-5 record in the process. But the next 2 years really proved his patience, but the next 2 years would prove how resilient he is and how he'd have to learn patience. He'd play in one game in 2020 and was super excited for 2021, but hit a second roadblock. In August of 2021, in one of their last practices before the start of the season, he'd suffer a non-contact ACL injury. This was absolutely devastating, and he was done for the year. What followed was a year-long recovery process for Brosmer, and this included surgery to repair his torn ACL and countless rehab hours where he worked relentlessly to get back to full strength. He ended up having surgery in September and actually talked to a couple of other quarterbacks who have come back from a torn ACL. Those QBs included De'Aaron King and Anthony Brown, who both played at Miami and Oregon, and both of them were also guys that Brosmer would train with in the offseason. Pretty big names. But Max would bounce back, work hard, and take over and become a superstar. Over the last 2 years at New Hampshire, they were lucky to have him. He said, quote, "Every single day, everything I do is about getting better and better for my team." Going into 2023, their head coach Rick Santos raved about his leadership skills, saying that he had the mental makeup and the leadership makeup to be the leader of the New Hampshire football team. He also said he has the chance to be one of the best football players in the country this year. In 2023, he was a finalist for the Walter Payton Award, as that is given to the nation's top player at the FCS level. He ended up leading the FCS in passing yards with 3,459 yards and finished second in touchdown passes with 28. He was a star for New Hampshire in 2023. While Coach Santos and the staff were optimistic Brosmer would return for his final year, Coach would find out shortly after Thanksgiving that he would be leaving. He said, quote, "In his mind, at least outwardly, he hadn't expressed that he was going to go one way or the other. His decision made sense, and why wouldn't he explore his options based on the type of player he is and him trying to boost his NFL stock?" Obviously, his first reaction was one of disappointment, but at the same time, he was super happy for the young man he had coached. He said, quote, "He's given so much to this program." Brosmer threw for 8,647 yards and 68 touchdowns during his time at UNH, and also ran for over 200 yards and 10 scores on the ground. Coming out of the portal, he got offers from Wake Forest, Western Kentucky, Western Michigan, and Buffalo, but ended up choosing his biggest one, which was Minnesota. He said, quote, "I went back and forth on it for a few days, but I had a dream of playing Big Ten football, and somehow I got the opportunity to do that. I'm blessed for the opportunity, and it was back and forth, and I wanted to see what I had in the portal and make an educated decision from there." He said it was all about increasing the possibility of playing in the NFL one day and had nothing to do with being unhappy or dissatisfied at UNH. Minnesota was a good landing spot because of the level of competition and the fact that Brosmer looked like he could be the clear favorite to be the Golden Gophers' starting quarterback. He said, quote, "Ultimately for me and my family, it was whatever school gave me the best opportunity to go to the NFL, and it would be that school. I set my standard that I wanted to play at the Power 5 level, and I wanted to get all the options on the table and make an educated guess." So now he has left New Hampshire to head to the Twin Cities to be the quarterback for Minnesota. But let's give a little background on what Minnesota was just dealing with. After having one of the better quarterbacks in school history of Tanner Morgan, Athon Akalikakmanis ended up being the starter last year, and while he was highly recruited and showed flash, he ended up really struggling and ended up being seen as one of the more inefficient quarterbacks in the country. After the two would battle it out for a little while, Athon would decide to transfer over to Rutgers, and now that made Max pretty much the guy. Gophers have had a couple of notable names over the last couple of years with guys like Tanner Morgan and Mitch Leidner, but they haven't had a quarterback drafted since 1972. Brosmer ended up playing in their Week 1 game against North Carolina, and after losing that game by 2 points, he swore he'd have a better performance. He then had 3 touchdowns in their next 2 combined games against Rhode Island and Nevada, and then had 2 good performances against both Iowa and number 12 Michigan, as he put up nearly 300 yards in the Big House and almost led them to a comeback. After that, he ended up having 3 rushing scores in a victory over number 11 USC, and also led them to a road victory over UCLA with 2 scores. He then had his best 3-game stretch of the season in late October to early November, as he went for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns against Maryland, had 200 yards and an upset victory on the road against number 24 Illinois, and then had 262 yards in a loss to Rutgers. Keep in mind, Minnesota also doesn't have necessarily the most explosive offense in the world as they run the ball more, but Brosmer was still putting up decent numbers, and he almost led them to an upset victory over number 4 Penn State, as they ended up losing by 1 point. His final regular season game would come on the road against Wisconsin, and he truly did go out on top. In that victory, he ended up passing for 2 touchdowns and ran for 1 more, and led Minnesota to a really solid record. At that point, that was their 7th win of the season, and he would face off against Kyron Drones in the Duke's Mayo Bowl against Virginia Tech. In the final game of his college career, he'd pass for 211 yards with 1 touchdown, and they would beat the Hokies 24-10. On the season, Brosmer ended up passing for 2,828 yards with 18 touchdowns and 6 interceptions to go alongside 5 rushing scores. This was one of the best seasons in Minnesota football history in terms of the quarterback position, and he made the jump from the FCS to the Big Ten look pretty easy. In terms of his quarterback ranking, many believed he was probably the 9th, 10th, or 11th best quarterback prospect in this year's draft, which would put him in day 3 or in the undrafted free agent range. He ended up getting invited to the combine, but unfortunately, he would not end up getting drafted. But this would sort of be a blessing for him, as he was able to pick exactly which team he wanted to go to, and it seemed like he had one place in mind. Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell does not typically attend pro days during his NFL draft prep, as since he was someone who helped out with that stuff before, he knows the strategies for exaggerating strengths and hiding weaknesses. But so far, O'Connell has been a head coach for 4 years now, and he always attends Minnesota's pro day because it's only 20 minutes away, and he is very close with PJ Fleck. That's how he first noticed Max Brosmer, and the moment that he went undrafted, they gave him a call, and he ended up signing with them. He received $246,000 in guaranteed money, and now he'll compete with J.J. McCarthy, Sam Howell, and Brett Rippon. They ended up losing Daniel Jones, but honestly, no offense, neither Sam Howell nor Brett Rippon really scare me all that much. Number 4 quarterbacks don't typically generate this much attention, but everybody's talking about Brosmer right now, as he made a great first impression at their minicamp, and many really do believe that he could be QB2 or QB3 if his cards are played right. He said, quote, "Whether I got drafted in the 3rd round or the 7th round or when undrafted, there was a reason that I'm here, and I do my best to live each day with that mentality of gratitude, and I think it all unfolds as it should." What's interesting is that Brosmer ended up playing 6 years of college football, and he actually has double the reps of J.J. McCarthy. He's 2 years older and threw twice as many passes as J.J. did. Obviously, McCarthy has a much higher ceiling, but Brosmer isn't exactly that far behind, and is not exactly a slouch either. I mean, this guy was an FCS All-American, put up ridiculous numbers at New Hampshire, and after having just one offseason, went from playing against schools like Maine to going into the Big House and playing Penn State. Things changed a lot in 1 year, but he will definitely have to improve his game, as NFL defenses are much better than the Big Ten. I'm not quite sure if Brosmer ever really does anything in the league, but for now it's an intriguing story, and it's also cool that he's literally going to the NFL team just 20 minutes away. But what do you guys think? If you're a Minnesota Gophers fan or a Vikings fan, what do you think of Max Brosmer? And who's another rookie I could take a look at in my next video? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.